Greetings to you all, friends, and I want to welcome you to today's presentation, which is going to be centered on a topic called a training ground. Each and every moment you hear the word training, what quickly rushes through the mind is the issue of knowledge acquisition, getting to have knowledge, skills, information on something. And I want to say mostly it centers on the things that we do on a daily basis, and one standing out is the issue of acquiring a skill, vocation, or profession, that which is converted into one's way of earning a living. But before we can get to that, I would want to talk about the earlier part of training, where each and every one of us, we have found ourselves. The moment we were born, we got exposed to the environment that would say was the first training ground. Voluntarily or involuntarily, we found ourselves getting to learn something around the environment, the way we talk, the way we behave, the way we eat, and the way we carry out ourselves may have actually a great foundation from the environment we first found ourselves in. Not to mean that everything that we're exposed to should be something that should be exhibited in our life, because then, just like any other training, at some point we begin to sieve and be able to see what information we can retain and that which may help us in our lives, and what other information we may actually recant and do away with to become responsible and people who would indeed stand out in society. Fast forward, coming to school, we found ourselves getting into schools right from secondary and then finally the tertiary level of education. Each and every stage has been a training ground. And I want to remind you that if you can have a reflection of where you're coming from, you'll discover to say whatever you went through was like a preparation for another level. The earlier part of education, getting to the primary, a secondary, then finally tertiary. All these are the way of preparing us for one higher level than that actual present level we were found in. Now, a training ground is something that we all need to realize and appreciate, without which we may not actually get to have the actualization of us acquiring the knowledge or skill base at that particular level in preparation for another level which we are to face later on in life. May I simply say, for a student, wherever you are, whatever course that you are doing, you need to know that that stage of life is very cardinal. You are being prepared for that which we should become in your life. Now, no one can learn without really taking up a deliberate move to make themselves available. Not just physical availability by way of the body being there, but mentally also being available and ready to go through the training and finally acquire the skills. With the coming in of these virtual platforms where some lessons are being offered through virtual, I have come to realize that to a number of people, students, sometimes it is as if a passport has been given to them to abscond. Now, this is about you and what you should be as a professional. It's not about your teacher, it's not about your lecturer. So you need to take up the responsibility of realizing that actually you have this wonderful opportunity to be mentored, to be tutored, to be taught, so that you become grounded in the profession that you have chosen. The lecturer may have their part to play, you have the larger part to play by way of being available, your body, your mind, and your sound being, so that you may acquire this knowledge. No one will learn out of magic. No one will learn passively. You need to actively participate and apply yourself without anybody forcing you, without anybody actually threatening you, because the realization should start from you to say this is your stage of life. Fast forward, I want to talk about the new graduates. When you are finally graduated from school, the expectations are high. You are full of zeal and you want to meet your new challenges. In your mind, what is there is that you have acquired the skills, and all that remains is for you to actually implement that which you have learned. But I want to mention that when you have graduated from a tertiary institution, you have actually just learned how to learn. It's time for you now to get grounded. So you move from one training ground, you enter another level of training ground. What you may have on the larger part is the theoretical part of your skills. Now you need to actually be grounded in the practicum. And so, don't be overzealous. Yes, zeal is important, and the high spirits is very important. But all those things need to be tamed if you are to learn something. You may find people there who have gone ahead of you, who have been doing that work for a number of years. They have mastered the skill, what to do, where to touch, and how to go about carrying out a certain procedure in whichever profession that you may find. Some of them might be at the same level of the qualification that you have, and some of them may have a lower qualification. But the fact that they have been there doing that for some time, you need actually to be ready to learn from them. How much you are to learn may depend on how you present yourself. What type of a personality, what traits are you showing to those you find? If you are a know-it-all type of personality, everyone will be shunning away from you and they will watch you to a point where you finally fail to perform. Diplomatically, and of course using the psychology of leadership, you can learn from anybody regardless of their position, regardless of their educational qualification. What you need to know is now the transition from the theory that you have mastered all the years of the training. Partially, of course, with those attachments, you might have been exposed here and there, but now that you finally getting into the industry, you want to be fully equipped and be grounded, and hence the reason for you to learn and be willing to be taught by people who would have gone ahead of you. May I take an example of those people who are trained in mechanics or engineering, where they need to deal with probably machinery and everything. You look at somebody, a client coming into your workshop where you are employed, and they bring their equipment, which is actually their investment. I don't think they bring it for somebody to experiment on, but they bring it so that a solution may be found and their equipment may be repaired. And so, if you're overzealous, you may end up damaging and causing havoc, not just for the owners of the organization that you work for, but also for yourself, because then that will be a dent on your professional progression. You need to learn as other people are doing that work. You are also present, referring to your notes on how you learned in class regarding that procedure, and then you see and watch what other people are doing. Then it begins to sink, and then you are getting to be grounded. There is this frenzy where we are all encouraged to start thinking of getting to establish our own things. And that I want to tell you that is not also an easy undertaking. The very fact that you have a qualification, the authority you have is that you have actually been ratified to say you have qualified. Yes, you have got that paper in terms of qualification. But you need to have another authority where your skill base in terms of practicals should also be sound enough for you to do things independently without any fear or favor. And how else can you reach that level if not through getting to learn from those you find? There is a training ground. Whether you like it or not, there is always a training ground for you to actually learn from other people. None can climb a ladder from the top, neither can somebody climb a tree from the top. There is always that starting point, which is the base, and then you begin to climb the ladder in terms of your professional progression. You begin to master the skills where you become confident, not just confident for nothing, but confident because you have learned and you continue to learn. Take time, therefore, to realize and understand the environment around you and be able to discover what that training ground may be for you. Whichever profession that you may be, being a teacher, being a doctor, being a pharmacist, being a nurse, being a pastor, whatever that you may find yourself into, there is always a training ground. May I not forget those who have already been there, because sometimes you may start thinking there is nothing more to learn because you might have been in the system for a long time. There is always what we call evidence-based type of practice in whichever field. Research is always producing new data and things are supposed to be done in a different manner, and you cannot stop learning. The way of doing things where you begin to say, this is the way we are doing this thing in the 90s, in the 80s, and you have stuck to that, may not be the best way. Continue to read the research articles here and there, be able to see what other people have come up with, and be able to sharpen your practice with the current trends. Because if you remain old model, you may actually be reduced to nothing. I'll still go back to the issue of being an engineer or mechanics, for instance. Those in the olden days, we might have machinery that were not so much of computerized. Today, we have more of computerized systems, and you just need to up your game and acquaint yourself with that type of knowledge if you are to remain relevant. If you are a health practitioner also, there are always new guidelines coming up. The way conditions were treated previously may not be the very way that they are being treated currently. So you continue to read and update yourself with the current treatment guidelines so that you remain relevant, be able to know which drugs are actually useful and which drugs are no longer in use, and then you live up to that standard. Suffice to say, each and every person, regardless of the level that you have reached, there still remains a training ground. And the training ground may be the people who have been there before you, may be literature that is latest in that particular field where you are. You have to read, you have to update yourself with the new information that is coming on the market, so that indeed you remain a professional that is up to date. Don't feel scolded if you find yourself in an environment where you are to work under the tutelage of another person, or if you are to stay in a certain position for a long time. Because it is true that some of you may live to be in that organization, never to rise to the topmost position. But that does not mean you would have wasted your time. That may just be a training ground for you. So learn what you can learn, and you'll be surprised how useful that information will be when you finally cross over into another organization. Getting back to the newly graduated people, yes, in terms of the employers, they are looking for a lot of experience, and that experience you might not have. But peradventure, if you came across somebody who may be offering uh, a placement for you to do your practicals from there, you grab it with your both hands so that you may learn something from there. And in no time, that will speak for you as experience, just as something that will be a fulfillment of what organizations are looking for. I thought of talking about this because I have seen people rushing to the top, always being envious of people who are on those higher positions, who are doing it in their professions. We want always to admire the current status of what people have acquired today. But we don't want really to take keen interest and be able to see what is it that they were able to pass through. What type of hurdles did they face to rise from one level to another? We should also be interested in the process, because through refinement in terms of professional actualization really takes time, takes interest from an individual in learning, in equipping oneself with the trains regarding what is being done. People might not be interested so much in the information that you have theoretically, but they want it to be applied. You'll be respected more, and you gain to have so much respect, and you gain to have a ground on which to attract so many clients in your area based on how much you put that theoretical knowledge or information into practicum. The application is what counts the most. The training ground is always important. And when you talk about the training ground, may we not just be limited with the skill base that we have. Let's also look at other aspects that govern the human endeavors, the social growth, the financial discipline, and economic growth in terms of management. All those things you can learn from other people. When you look at how they are doing things, how they carry themselves, do they have the excitement that you have seen other people have? How do they manage with all that they have, with all the level of education that they have acquired, with all the skills and the standing in terms of the society standing that they have? They still remain unmoved, not to be excited unnecessarily by way of recklessly leading their lives, but they remain composed, knowing that life is more than what other people may talk about, but it's more about composure and defining yourself and be able to see what you want to become in life, not just in the growth in terms of professional growth, but also in all other facets of life. What is your training ground? It's time for you to look around and be able to see where you are currently. When you are a student, or if you are a student, apply yourself more as a student in learning that profession that you are training in. If you have graduated, make sure that you sober up and be able to see how you should continue learning from the very first basal position, and then you begin to climb higher. If you have been already there and you have that higher position, look at how many other ways you can still continue to learn, because each and every level has got its own training ground. May you grab that training ground, take advantage of it. Opportunities come just but once, twice if you're lucky, 3 times. Once you miss that one, then you would have missed everything. Be blessed even as you reflect on what that training ground may be for you. Thank you.